When Young Sheldon was first announced, I wasn't really interested, even though I'm a huge fan of The Big Bang Theory, as my subscribers know, and despite its problems, I'm nostalgic about Two and a Half Men, and very excited about the upcoming spin-off Stuart Fails to Save the Universe. All this is to say, it's clear that Chuck Lorre's had a dramatic impact on television. But a spin-off about a young Sheldon, I was curious about it, but I thought it was going to be executed all wrong. I thought it was just a money grab, basically. Anyway, it turns out I was wrong. I watched the show and I loved it. In a way, it's the perfect 21st century sitcom. It's ingenious. And today I want to try and explain why. And the reason might go deeper than you think. One of the biggest challenges facing modern television is that audiences no longer agree on, well, anything. 20 or 30 years ago, sitcoms could target a relatively broad middle ground. Today, audiences are divided by age, politics, religion, culture, geography, and 1,000 other things. Incidentally, this is also part of the reason the laugh track disappeared, which I'll probably talk about in another video. Comedy itself became muddier, less unanimous. What one person found funny, another found offensive, and what one person saw as insightful, another saw as preachy. Most modern shows solve this problem by picking a lane. They appeal to a particular audience, a particular worldview, and one demographic. Young Sheldon appeals to many different kinds of people, and I don't just mean comedy lovers and drama lovers, although it does that too. Think about the Cooper family. Mary is deeply religious, Sheldon is aggressively scientific and skeptical, Connie is more practical and worldly than either of them. George often approaches life from an entirely different angle again, a more practical one. But the key thing is that the show never tells us who is right, which sounds simple, but it's surprisingly unique. Young Sheldon tries to understand people. Nobody is reduced to a stereotype, nobody becomes a caricature. The show consistently finds the humanity behind people's beliefs, motives, interests, and worries. Young Sheldon is an anachronism. It is contrary to the time in which it exists, but it's also the show that this era of television desperately needed. We live in an era of algorithms, an era where everything is personalized, targeted, and filtered. Entertainment increasingly serves specific audiences and specific identities and worldviews. We're constantly being sorted into categories, recommended content based on what we already believe, what we already like. Young Sheldon feels almost old-fashioned in its approach. It believes that people with completely different perspectives can share the same living room. The Cooper family disagree on everything: education, money, faith, parenting, and the meaning of success, and yet they remain a family. The show highlights that people can fundamentally disagree and still care about one another. Some of the best episodes operate on exactly that principle, and that's what gives the show its unusual universality. It shows us the good intentions in people, it shows us the flaws, and above all, it shows us the humanity in people. The title is misleading. The obvious version of Young Sheldon would simply be 7 seasons of a child genius being smarter than everyone around him, maybe dealing with bullies, maybe struggling with people who don't understand him. I think that would have made a great film. I'm not convinced it would have made a great sitcom, because there's only so many times you can watch a genius walk into a room and be the smartest person there. Luckily, the show asks a much deeper question than what's it like to be Sheldon Cooper. It asks, what's it like to live with Sheldon Cooper? What is it like to raise him, to teach him, to be his sister, his brother, his father? To be the person constantly trying to bridge the gap between him and the rest of the world. The real emotional center of the show isn't Sheldon, and that's because every member of the Cooper family represents a different human experience. Take George. On paper, George should be difficult to relate to for many viewers, but what makes him compelling is that he's constantly trying. He loves his family, but he doesn't always understand them, especially Sheldon. George knows how to throw a football, he knows how to fix things, he knows how to navigate the everyday world, but when it comes to connecting with his son, a son whose mind works completely differently from his own, he's lost. And honestly, who can't relate to that? We've all had moments where somebody we care about feels impossible to understand. George represents the frustration and the love that can exist simultaneously. And for any of us who have struggled with decisions, choosing what is right for our family over what is right for ourselves, and even then worrying you've made the wrong decision, George is relatable in a lot of ways. And then there's Mary. Mary spends most of the series trying to balance competing responsibilities. She's trying to be a good mother, a good wife, a good Christian, and a good member of her community. The problem is that those goals don't always align. She loves Sheldon deeply, but she also worries about Missy feeling neglected. She wants to support Georgie but doesn't always know how, and she's constantly pulled in different directions, in many different ways. And I think that's what makes her relatable. Most adults eventually discover that life isn't about making perfect decisions. It's about choosing which imperfect decision you can live with. Missy is funny. She's emotional but strong, she's insecure but brave, she wants attention and never gets it next to her genius twin brother. She wants to feel valued. She's the character who constantly asks a question many people have asked at some point in their lives: what do I have to do to be noticed? And sometimes she worries that being ordinary means being invisible. I think almost everybody has felt that way at some point. Georgie offers a different perspective. For much of the show, Georgie feels like the family disappointment. He's completely unacademic, he even chooses not to pursue football. But Georgie's story is really about discovering that intelligence comes in different forms. He's entrepreneurial, socially skilled, resilient. He's able to maintain a positive attitude through tough situations, and he understands things Sheldon never will. Most people eventually realize that success isn't about being the smartest person in the classroom, it's about finding the things you're good at, and Georgie embodies that journey. And for those moments where we dare to take our own path, despite the advice of everyone around us, when we roll the dice on our own self-belief, it's in those moments we can really relate to Georgie. And then of course there's Sheldon himself. The funny thing about Sheldon is that, just like his Big Bang counterpart, he's surprisingly relatable to many people, and you don't have to be a genius to relate to him. Most of us have experienced what Sheldon experiences, namely the feeling of being different, the feeling that everybody else received a rulebook for life that somehow skipped us, the frustration of having something in your head that you can't quite communicate to other people, when you feel so passionately about something, and for a long time, maybe forever, you can't find anyone else who shares that passion. That's what makes Sheldon, well, for me, maybe the most relatable of them all. In a word, it's vulnerability. And I think this is why Young Sheldon resonates with so many people. Most of us aren't Sheldon, but we're not Missy either, or George or Mary or Georgie or Connie or Dale or Mandy or any of the others. We're all of them. At different points in our lives, we become different members of the Cooper family. Sometimes we're Sheldon, feeling misunderstood, and sometimes we're Missy, feeling overlooked. The brilliance of Young Sheldon is that it deals with the many different ways human beings struggle to understand themselves and each other. Classic sitcoms often reset at the end of every episode. That's kind of what situational comedy means. Everything returns to normal, nothing changes, nobody grows, and if they do, it's extremely slow. And that's comforting, it's what we look for in a comfort show. We like to sit down and know exactly what we're getting. For those of us who are sitcom enthusiasts, that's all we need to feel entertained. But many of today's viewers expect more emotional investment, continuity, consequences. Young Sheldon understands this perfectly. It can still be funny and cozy, but underneath the mostly predictable setting is a genuine family drama. The audience isn't just laughing at the characters, they're worrying about them, rooting for them, growing attached to them. The show recognizes that 21st century audiences want comedy and emotional depth at the same time, and that's exactly what it provides. And part of this move beyond comedy is reflected in the characters. In every other sitcom I can think of, the eccentricities of each character, the off-putting or shocking traits, tend to become stronger with time. Some examples from The Big Bang Theory would be Stuart or Bernadette. In, for example, The Simpsons, Homer is a good example of this, or Ned Flanders. Of course, this is where the term flanderization comes from. Flanderization means the process by which a complex, multifaceted character slowly morphs into an exaggerated, oversimplified version of themselves. In Young Sheldon, we experience deflanderization. We start off with characters who we think are quite eccentric, and over time, they don't become more exaggerated and more simplified, they become more complicated, more nuanced, and we grow to understand what they have in common with each other. Lines are blurred. Part of this is a response to the changes in how people view their content. People now binge watch television. They can spend hours with the same character in a single sitting. And if those characters never change, it becomes very noticeable now. One of the most satisfying aspects of Young Sheldon is watching people evolve. I think Georgie might be one of the best examples. At first he seems destined to either be a stereotypical older brother or the less intelligent sibling, the comic relief. But over time, the show reveals depths that weren't initially obvious. I'm talking about his business instincts, his resilience, and his ability to connect with people. The same thing happens with every single character in the show, even to an extent the more peripheral characters. Everybody is on a journey. The way I see it, nostalgia is a type of magic. It's powerful, and it can be used to great effect, but if you're not careful, it can very easily consume you. It can become a dark magic. A lot of modern entertainment relies on nostalgia, sometimes a little too much. We're constantly being reminded of things we used to love. Stranger Things is another good example of this with the 80s. The problem is that nostalgia often becomes the entire product. Young Sheldon avoids that trap. Yes, it's connected to its predecessor, The Big Bang Theory, and yes, it's set in the late 80s and then the early 90s, but it doesn't survive purely on references. The 80s and 90s setting matters because it shapes the story. Sheldon's childhood would have been fundamentally different in the age of smartphones and social media. George and Mary's parenting challenges would also have looked different. The educational system would have looked different. For that matter, the world would have looked completely different. A lot of times, nostalgia is there for pretty decoration. And the way I see it, Young Sheldon uses it more structurally, and it helps the show feel real rather than imitative. Another reason it feels so real is the family at the centre. And this is probably the most important point. As we know, the Cooper family isn't aspirational. They're far from perfect. They argue all the time. There are constant communication breakdowns. They make mistakes all the time, but they keep trying. In an age of carefully curated social media lives, there's something refreshing about a family that feels messy and complicated and authentic. Of course, Young Sheldon isn't the first sitcom to show a family arguing. Most sitcom families argue, but what I'm saying is that the Cooper family feel different in that their conflicts don't simply disappear at the end of the episode. They build over years and leave lasting marks on the characters. The show understands that real families don't just have arguments, they carry the memory of those arguments, and that's what makes the Coopers feel like real people. One of the things I admire about The Big Bang Theory is that it definitively shows that there are different types of intelligence and that they're all important. And this is something Young Sheldon has inherited from The Big Bang. For a show centered around one of television's greatest geniuses, Young Sheldon has a surprisingly humble worldview. Young Sheldon, like its predecessor, reminds us that academic intelligence is only one type of intelligence. It's not just about IQ and scientific or mathematical intelligence, but emotional intelligence, business sense, street smarts, linguistic intelligence, analytical, practical. Again and again, the supposedly smartest person in the room finds himself completely lost in situations that other characters navigate effortlessly. Season 2 episode 5 is a good example of this, when Missy and Sheldon are tested for different kinds of cognitive skills. And I think that's a very 21st century message. Older television shows often celebrated a single definition of success and of intelligence, a single path through life. Young Sheldon rejects that idea. Finally, there's the narration, using the voice of Jim Parsons, one of the smartest decisions the show ever made. For the Big Bang Theory fans, it created an immediate sense of continuity, but it serves a deeper purpose that we don't talk about as much. The entire show becomes an act of reflection. It's a memoir. It's a story about memory, about looking back, about understanding things years later that you couldn't understand at the time. As adults, many of us eventually realize that our parents were more complicated than we gave them credit for, that our childhood wasn't exactly as we remembered it. The people we judged harshly may have been struggling in ways we never saw. The narration captures that feeling beautifully. It's the voice of somebody learning to understand his own past. And if you know The Big Bang Theory, if you know the adult Sheldon Cooper, you know what a breakthrough this is for him. This reflection is Sheldon's character development. So there are two stories going on at once. The story of Sheldon's past as a child, and the story of Sheldon's future, his reflection, his real growth as a character, where he finally learns real understanding and empathy. And in a world that often encourages us to judge first and understand later, that's a resonant and powerful message. As my subscribers know, I'm excited to cover Stuart Fails to Save the Universe when it comes out next month. I just thought this was a good opportunity to introduce Young Sheldon to the channel, because I'd like to do character analyses of these characters just like I have done with The Big Bang Theory and Brooklyn Nine-Nine. If you like this video, consider giving it a thumbs up, it really helps out. Subscribe if you're interested in this kind of content, hit the notification bell. If you want a bit more content and more updates, then you can follow me on Instagram. And I just want to give a quick shout out to my supporters on Patreon. Thank you to Carbon Atom, who has just joined, and thank you to Star Laura, Greg Whitworth, Casey, Carlos Diaz, Daniel, Beverly, and Keenan Smith. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.